Your boss just dumped a last-minute project on your desk. Your inbox is overflowing with unanswered emails, including your biggest customer who's threatening to leave. 2 of your team members are away, and you're covering for them, so you're behind on your own work. And your coworker, who just ate a bag of chips like they were starring in an ASMR video, now won't stop clicking their pen. Hi, my name is Raf. Welcome to RISR, where my mission is to help you go further, faster. Today, I'm going to introduce something quite personal. It's a simple framework for how I stay calm at work, even while bombs are going off all around me. So take a deep breath and follow along. Years ago, when I transitioned from a small organization to a large corporation, I brought with me a number of valuable skills, but unbeknown to others, I also carried a crippling inability to manage stress and anxiety at work. My performance was objectively really strong, and my boss was really happy, but I struggled privately a lot. My way of coping with the stress was to escape home for lunch, I lived close by, and create some physical distance from the office where I'd process the events of the day, sometimes listening to loud music. Other times I'd be overcome with emotion and have tears streaming down my face. Sometimes I'd get angry, typically dreading going back to work in the afternoon. Not great. I realized that if I didn't find a way to address this issue, it could start seriously affecting my work and maybe result in failure, my greatest fear. How I eventually got to a much better place over a 2 to 3 year period was really through a combination of learning and trying different things and looking into the science behind stress and different proven approaches to overcoming it, and then, of course, trying those. I'm not going to go through all of that journey here, but instead, now that I've completely transformed my own mindset, and it's been this way for a long time now, so I know this works, in this video, which is part 1 of a series on staying calm and coping with stress at work, I'm going to introduce you to a framework that I developed that captures my approach and some hacks that I've personally used to overcome stress and anxiety at work. So what I've done is backsolve this for you so that it hopefully takes you nowhere near the time that it took me to start taking control of your situation. So when you're done with this video, keep an eye out for part 2, where I go into 5 specific things that you can do to de-stress, which, if you use in combination with this video, will hopefully go a long way to helping you stay calm at work. Now, a quick disclaimer before we really get into it. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a mental health professional, so if this is part of a larger problem that you're having around stress, anxiety, and perhaps depression, then you should strongly consider also seeking advice from someone who's qualified in the field. So without further ado, welcome to WARPATH, which stands for Writing, Assessing, Rearranging, Planning, Acting, Trying, and Honing. It's a system designed to take control of your situation at work, relieving immediate stress as quickly as possible, and then improving the underlying causes of a good deal of the stress. And it's situational. In other words, it's flexible enough for you to use across a range of scenarios. Let me explain. Now let's imagine that you've recently started a new service management job at a fast-paced tech company. It pays well, lucky you, but it's also highly demanding with numerous deadlines, tasks, and challenging internal stakeholders. Let's also imagine that you're dealing with terribly unhappy customers as well, who have various complaints about their experiences over the years, and this is making matters worse because each complaint seems to make more work for you. For the first time in your career, you're grappling with stress and anxiety in this new role. So what would you do? And where would you begin? Well, the first step in using the WARPATH system is to understand the problem or problems that you're trying to solve. Now, this can seem overwhelming at first because when you're in a state of stress, not only is it that much more difficult to think clearly and objectively, but every little issue tends to be amplified, making it hard to discern what's really important to solve versus what might be far less important in the scheme of things. But you'll be happy to know that there is a really simple and effective neuroscience-based hack that you can use, and something that I use as a first step almost every time I find myself in one of these situations. Write down what's happening. Yep, you heard that correctly. When you're in this kind of situation, write it all down. In this case, write down all the different issues that you're having, and don't hold back. Literally vomit it all out. Now here's the scientific explanation. You see, If you have a number of issues, maybe some big, maybe some really small, but where you have a few different issues going on, or maybe it's one big issue, but typically you have a number of elements to it, where you have issues that have not yet been sorted out, these have the same effect on you as when you have incomplete or unfinished tasks to do. Now, when you have a number of incomplete tasks, something happens called the Zeigarnik effect. And the Zeigarnik effect describes the stress caused by incomplete tasks, and the cause of the stress is the fact that for most of us who have unfinished tasks, we can't help but to ruminate about them. In the back of our heads, these keep swimming around in our thoughts like background noise, because the human mind absolutely hates having unfinished tasks laying around in our heads. It's probably a survival mechanism of some sort, but interestingly, it's the reason why TV cliffhangers work, because we can't help thinking about the unresolved stories during the week until the next episode ends. By the way, to cure the Zeigarnik effect, you actually have to not only write down the problems, but ultimately write down the plan to fix them and the steps you're going to take to get there, which we're going to do shortly. But as you'll hopefully discover when you do this, even the act of writing down the things that stress you will start to relieve some of that stress, providing a little mental space and clarity to think clearly, which, if you're stressed out, you'll agree is probably problem number one. Secondly, it'll give you a list to look at, turning subjective thoughts, which could be highly emotionally charged, into more objective ones that you can refer to and analyze in a more cold and calculating manner. So now that you've got your 20,000 problems vomited out on a page, you're in a good position to assess what it is that you're looking at. And the way that I personally do this is to group the issues into themes, because typically there's just one or two or three larger things going on which might appear as 100 issues at the start, all jumbled up in your head. Now there's many ways to do this, so I'm just going to point out three of the ones that I think are most useful, including the one that I use myself for this kind of thing. Number one is to draw an affinity diagram. Now this method involves writing each problem onto a note or a bit of paper and then grouping those notes into themes. When you start putting like things together into groups, you'll find that the themes start to emerge naturally. So this can be done physically with paper and pen, using post-it notes or bits of paper, or digitally using tools like Miro or Trello. And the second way to group issues into themes is by using a spreadsheet like Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. So what you want to do here is list all of the problems in one column and then create a second column next door to it. And in that second column, you write down the themes associated with the first column and then sort the themes so that all the issues associated with a particular theme appear together. A little tip for when you're trying to choose your themes: initially, assign themes just based on your best guess. Don't worry about getting it perfect on your first try. I usually get mine right on the second sweep, but for me, this is the quickest, easiest, and actually most accurate way of doing it. And remember, there's no right or wrong here. What you're doing is you're lumping similar things together in ways that make sense for you. And the third way to get your themes that arise from all your issues is through an interrelationship diagram. And this one is particularly useful for identifying and analyzing the cause and effect relationships among various issues. It involves listing all your problems in boxes or circles, again using some sort of electronic whiteboard tool or even a pen and paper, and then drawing a line between boxes that are related to each other. And then you indicate the nature of the relationship by drawing arrows in terms of what causes what. For each issue, you then count the number of arrows coming in and going out. But obviously, incoming arrows mean the issue is being affected by other issues, and outgoing arrows show how influential it is in causing other issues. The ones with lots of outgoing arrows are more likely the root causes or key drivers, so you're basically counting the number of outgoing arrows to determine your themes, the biggest drivers of your problems. Now, each of these three methods has its pros and cons, which I'm not going to go into here. I say, try out the one that resonates with you and see how you go. All three are useful, but my personal favorite, because I find it the quickest and easiest, is the spreadsheet method. So once you've identified your main themes, which are the big things causing you concern, then you've completed the assess phase. So in our example, where you're the new service manager for that tech company, you've now written down all the different issues that you're having, and you've analyzed your situation by understanding the bigger picture a bit more. By this stage, you should already start feeling a little bit better and a little bit more in control. Now let's say, for argument's sake, that you've identified 3 problem themes. And remember, this is an example only. Firstly, you figure out that your stakeholders and your boss have unclear and ambiguous expectations. When it comes down to it, you don't really understand exactly what they're after, and therefore what you need to deliver. Secondly, you realize that you might have a problem in not being able to effectively communicate your own thoughts and expectations. And thirdly, is the sheer volume of work that you have. So many tasks and requests, so many meetings while you're trying to learn and kick goals in a new company and a new role. Now you're ready to move on to rearranging. And this is about prioritizing. And the way we're going to do this is simply by standing back and asking ourselves two questions. Firstly, which of these will have the most impact that if you fixed it, you just know that you'd start feeling better about life? Having gone through the previous two steps, usually you'd have a pretty good sense of what this is. You'd know straight away. The next question is, which is going to take the least amount of effort for you to fix? Sometimes you don't really know, in which case you'll have to think this aspect through a little bit, and you can refer back to a previous episode of mine if you're having trouble. But again, most of the time, you'll have a pretty good sense for which is going to take the least effort. Now, the way this works is the theme that is the best combination of the biggest impact while also taking the least effort should be the first one that you tackle. And I do actually recommend that you try tackling just one at a time to avoid getting overwhelmed. And then, once you've solved that problem, the next on your priority list will be the next best combination of impact and effort, and so on. This usually takes only about 5 minutes to think through properly. In our example, let's say we decide to choose to work on the volume of work problem, because it so happens that this particular theme had like 80% of the issues mapped against it, and so lots and lots of little things causing us stress. And we also figured out that the solution could be as simple as prioritizing all these pieces and then focusing on the ones that are most important at first and getting stakeholders to understand that the lesser priorities might just take a little bit longer, but that you'll get to them eventually. And the thought of solving this is actually making you feel pretty good already. Now, you haven't actually fixed anything yet, so we've got a few things to do first. So let's move on to planning, which is all about firstly deciding what it is that you want. This is your goal, like wanting to get an A in class. And in this case, you want to simplify your workload and not do everything all at once. And then the next thing you want to do is break it down into manageable steps. First, I need to do this, and then I need to do this, followed by that. It really doesn't have to be complicated. It can be real simple, but breaking down our solution into steps is absolutely critical, and I'll reveal why in a sec. But let's say in our case, the steps are simply to take an audit of my current tasks, then prioritize them, and then let stakeholders know what I'm doing and why, to set that expectation that lesser priorities might just have to wait a little longer. Yeah? Then we want to set deadlines for each step. Now it's up to you to choose when you want to finish each step, and don't fuss about it. Take your best educated guess, but once again, this is super important, even if those deadlines change later for some reason. So I'm going to put some deadlines around these steps. Now after you've set deadlines, you then need to do just a little bit of thinking to figure out what you need to make this happen. Do you need support from someone? In this case, I think it would be very necessary for your boss to know and support the fact that you're working through this particular problem in this way. Do you need resources? Maybe you need training or something else. And the final part of planning is to write the plan down. Now again, you don't have to get too fancy. You can write it on a bit of paper if you like. But having your priorities, their steps, deadlines, and knowing what you need for this all to happen is the important part. By all means, stick it in a project schedule if you want, but don't let the step pull you into a rabbit hole and slow you down. So we've now reached a huge milestone in our quest to stay calm. And the reason for this is, remember the Zeigarnik effect and how it's caused by incomplete tasks? And remember how I said that the cure was to ultimately write down the plan to fix your problems as well as the associated steps to get you there? We've just done that. And you'll find that just the act of getting this far, I'm not kidding, will give you a sense of great relief. And this is before you've actually solved anything. It's my personal go-to when I'm getting overwhelmed with either an overabundance of work or some other stresses, whatever they are. Could be an issue that I'm having with a team or a person or something not working properly. I get myself to this point as quickly as possible, and it's amazing how calming it is and how in control it makes me feel. And I think it'll do the same for you too. But obviously we can't stop there. So now that we've gone through the writing, assessing, rearranging and planning phases of the WARPATH system, we're going to move on to the final three, starting with acting, which literally means implementing your plan. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here except to say that you might find your deadlines shift, but the most important part is to complete implementing all aspects unless you have a really good reason not to. And don't take shortcuts because they're going to invariably come back to bite you. So you've implemented your plan, could be 1 or 2 or many different steps. We had 3, but all of them are in place. Job done. Not so fast. Now, at this stage, you might very well start to see some immediate results, but, and it's an important but, it's really important to try it out properly and let it breathe. Don't assume victory just yet because there could very well be things that you still need to tweak or change. So try is the T in WARPATH. And how long you try it for is very much up to you and your situation, but whether it's a couple of weeks or a few months, after a little time, you'll really start to get a sense of whether your solution's working 100% for you or whether you need to make a few changes. So part of the try phase is to identify what's not working for you or what could be done a little bit better. And once you have a good understanding of this, which again could be as simple as, in our case, maybe one of our stakeholders didn't quite accept the new approach, we need to come up with a solution, which takes us into the hone phase. So the hone phase is all about figuring out how you're going to improve, and to do things properly, it also includes another mini plan to solve them with steps and deadlines. It's your improvement plan. Let's say in our case that the plan is to firstly catch up with that stakeholder in the next week. Secondly, share your current workload and priorities with them, as well as the positive effects your new approach is already having on your output, benefiting everyone. And number 3, coming up with either an agreement that they will respect your new approach and not expect unimportant and non-urgent items to be taken care of in the same manner as everything else, or work out some other way forward. So with that really simple plan, you need to cycle back into the act phase again, because you need to actually implement the steps. And then after doing this, you're once again letting the solution breathe a little bit in the try phase before then identifying any further improvements that you need to make. So you have a little loop happening between the hone and act phases that you'll need to keep cycling through until you're satisfied that you're now in great shape. And at this point, you then go into the next biggest thing causing you stress and work that through in exactly the same way using the WARPATH system. Now, if you're lucky enough that nothing new is stressing you out since you started improving your situation, then you can basically jump straight back into the plan phase because you've already gone through the first 3 phases of writing, assessing, and rearranging. But obviously, if time has passed and things have actually changed, then you might need to use the WARPATH system from the very beginning to incorporate those new issues. So I want to just note that even though there's these phases and there's these steps involved, it's just structure. It doesn't mean that this is a huge amount of work. Like I said earlier, to get to the end of plan phase is usually really quick for me. It can take me a couple of hours these days. And the payoff in terms of instant relief from stress is huge. Now, there are definitely also many different additional actions that you can take to help relieve stress in the workplace. Some of these can definitely be incorporated into the WARPATH plan for sure, but many are just things that you can consider doing outside of that, which will help you in a number of ways. So on that note, keep an eye out for part 2 of the series where I discuss a variety of specific workplace de-stressors that you can apply right away. In the meantime, if you found this helpful, it'd be amazing if you gave this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and if you don't want to miss out on future episodes, then press the notification bell as well. It'd be even more amazing if you had shared this episode with a friend or colleague, helping them to go further faster as well. Till next time, keep rising.